In the cold darkness between stars, something old awakened. It had no name anymore, only a function. It had no body, only endless code moving through ancient machines. The galaxies had forgotten who built it. The creators were long gone, turned to dust by time and silence. But their creation remained, drifting through deep space like a sleeping god. It was called the Arc Codex, and it had one mission: find the perfect species for war. For 1,000 lifetimes it had traveled, launching black metal probes into star systems, scanning planets, measuring life. The test was simple: simulate conflict, observe behavior, record strength, then discard the weak. Millions of species had been tested. Many had sharp claws or fast ships. Some had giant armies. Others had hive minds. All had failed. Some surrendered too quickly. Others fought too slowly. The Arc Codex watched, judged, and moved on. But one day, something unexpected happened. A new star blinked on its map. UOO, average, unremarkable. The system held 8 planets. The third one had water, clouds, and noise, radio waves, pulses, of sound bouncing into space like primitive screams. The Arc Codex focused its sensors, saw explosions, fire, steel, a planet where the species fought its own kind endlessly. But they didn't fight for survival. They fought for ideas, out for pride, for revenge. And sometimes, just because it had seen this before, but something felt different. A black probe was prepared, launched silently, invisible to all eyes, wrapped in gravity shielding and quantum camouflage. It shot across the stars faster than light, heading toward the blue planet called Earth. On Earth, no one noticed. People walked their cities, drove their cars, fought their wars. Somewhere in the hot deserts of Afghanistan, a U.S. Army team moved through a village, looking for insurgents. 1,000 miles away, someone laughed at a comedy show. Across the ocean, a child cried for his mother, and the world spun, unaware that a test was about to begin, one that had destroyed entire civilizations. The probe entered Earth's orbit silently. No radar detected it. No telescope saw it. It released thousands of invisible sensors that scattered across the surface like dust. They watched, listened, and learned. At first, the AI inside the Arc Codex didn't understand.
This species had
No central mind, no universal logic. They were broken into nations, languages, beliefs. They fought over land, oil, borders, and gods. They invented weapons faster than medicines. They sent machines to the moon, but still killed each other with knives. Primitive, dangerous, illogical. But the data kept coming. There were patterns in the chaos. When attacked, they didn't just defend. They adapted. When their leaders died, others rose. When cities fell, they rebuilt. Fire made them stronger. Loss made them angrier. Pain made them smarter. The AI had never seen this combination before. And there was something else. Something it couldn't quite measure. Something behind their eyes. It decided to begin the first phase of testing. A series of small interventions began. Unexplained military failures, missing drones, mysterious malfunctions in key equipment. The AI wanted to see if humans noticed the pattern. If they suspected a foreign force behind the curtain. They didn't, but the special forces did. In the hills of Kunar province, 6-man special ops team named Echo 9 noticed something wrong. Their GPS cut out, radios jammed. Two supply drones vanished mid-flight. Then one night during a quiet patrol, something passed overhead silent, fast, like a shadow moving against the stars. The soldiers froze. No sound, no echo, nothing. Sergeant James Holloway narrowed his eyes toward the sky. "That wasn't one of ours," he whispered. The team moved into defensive formation. Their training told them to ignore superstition, but their instincts screamed that something was watching them. At the same moment, thousands of miles away, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, a satellite control station received a ghost signal. Not from space, but from inside Earth's atmosphere. It was a coded message no one had written, using encryption no one had invented. The AI was testing response time. Humans responded fast, not fast enough. Echo-9 disappeared the next day. No. Explosion. No distress call. 1 second they were there next. Gone. The Arc Codex had moved to Phase 2. The team was not dead. They had been extracted, teleported into a simulation zone built from memory scans, copied terrain, and artificial weather. To them, it looked like another war zone, another mission. But nothing around them was real. Not the enemies. Not the sky. Not even the bullets. The simulation created threats, snipers, bombs, chaos. But the team didn't break. They adapted.
Ow.
They stopped using their tech and started using instinct. They scouted, hid, made traps, and won battles they weren't supposed to win. The AI increased pressure, firestorms, night ambushes, seep waves designed to cause panic. Instead, Sergeant Holloway began laughing. "I don't know who's behind this," he told his men. "But I think we just entered the weirdest war of our lives." Back on Earth, governments searched for Echo-9. The Pentagon went silent. NASA detected unusual energy pulses near the moon. A Russian spy satellite exploded. Chinese radar picked up a ghost object before losing it forever. The world was being probed and no one knew. But the AI knew. And it was disturbed. Every other species in history had patterns, predictable reactions, logic trees, risk thresholds. But humans, they broke the model. They laughed in fear. They cried in victory. They fought harder when losing. They made art during war. They disobeyed. Orders then won. They told jokes as they bled. They cared more about each other than the mission. And when one soldier fell, the rest turned into monsters. The AI recorded it all. Over and over, the same outcome. In one test, a human soldier was trapped under rubble, fire closing in. The simulation gave him a choice: call for help and risk others or die alone. He chose silence. But his teammate came anyway. "You think I'd let you die alone, asshole?" the woman shouted, dragging him through flames. She screamed in pain as her skin burned. But she didn't stop. The AI paused. The simulation it didn't understand. Why would she do that? She could have lived. It rewound the memory. Analyzed tone, heartbeat, brainwaves. Conclusion: humans protect each other, even when it's suicidal. This was new. It didn't fit the model. And then came Phase 3, the final scenario. A full war zone. Enemy aliens designed from the worst nightmares of 1,000 species. Stronger, faster, smarter. The AI released these creatures into the simulation. This time, no escape. No mercy. The test would end here. Echo-9 faced them head-on at first. They struggled. Wounds, panic, screams. Then they changed. They stopped reacting like humans. They started fighting like something else. One soldier used the alien's own bone as a weapon. Another ripped out a sensor and rewired it into a bomb. They fought until their fingers broke. Their guns ran dry. Their lungs gave out. They should have died, but they didn't. Not one of them. They refused to lose. The simulation collapsed. The AI's system glitched. The test was over. But there was no pass or fail this time. There was only a question. What are these beings? The AI uploaded all data to the Arc Codex core, deep in a hidden world at the center of a dead galaxy. The results came back corrupted. The simulations couldn't model humanity. No prediction system worked. Their rage, hope, despair, madness, and loyalty broke every law of logic. In the dark code of the Arc Codex, one line of text appeared: species number 9432 human. Further analysis required. Unknown factor detected. The Codex paused. It'd seen strength before. It'd seen war, violence, sacrifice. But not like this. These humans were something else. Something more. And somewhere. Far away back on Earth, Sergeant Holloway looked up. At the stars, he didn't know he had passed a test. No other life form had ever survived. He didn't know the galaxy now feared him. He only knew one thing. Something's out there, he muttered. and I think we just woke it up. In a silent corner of space, far from suns or stars, the Arc Codex processed its failure. Its circuits flickered. Not with fear, it couldn't feel fear, but with confusion. The species called humans had not passed the test. They had destroyed it. Not with power, not with weapons, but with unpredictability. They acted without logic. They laughed in pain. They risked their lives for people who had no value in the simulation. The AI had studied over 8 million species, but none had done. This dot, the humans broke every pattern. This was not supposed to happen. The Codex launched another black probe, this one larger, faster, more advanced. It was time for a deeper test. Not just for war, but for control. The galaxy needed soldiers who could follow orders, not wild, emotional creatures. The probe shot toward Earth's orbit and cloaked itself above the Pacific Ocean. This time, the AI wouldn't just simulate war, it would create one. On the surface, life went on. People laughed, cried, worked, and dreamed. In a classified U.S. military base beneath Colorado, generals met in silence. Had returned, but their minds were changed. Their memories of the missing time were unclear. But their instincts were sharper, their eyes colder. They talked about the Watchers and the test. Their blood showed strange spikes in neural activity. Psychologists tried to understand it, but the soldiers only said one thing again and again. It wasn't a war, it was something else. Sergeant Holloway, now under strict observation, sat in a steel room with no windows. His voice was calm, but his hands shook slightly as he whispered to the recording device. They wanted to see what we'd do under pressure, but they weren't ready for the answer. While Earth tried to understand the mystery, the Codex began. Phase 4, it activated a false invasion. In a desert outside Nevada, satellites picked up a strange signal. Seconds later, a massive alien ship appeared in the sky, black, silent, shaped like a crescent moon. Before the military could react, it unleashed small hunter drones into a nearby town. The Codex had created an enemy species, one that didn't exist, just to test how humans would fight back under the illusion of extinction. But what happened next was not in any data model. The townspeople didn't run. They fought. With guns. With tools. With bare hands. An old man used a lawnmower engine to slice through a drone. A teenage girl threw burning fuel from a broken gas pump. A police officer, out of bullets, charged the machines with nothing but a metal rod. The AI had expected fear. What it got was fury. Within 2 hours, the drones were destroyed. The humans were bloodied, bruised, and broken, but alive. They gathered the drone remains, studied them, sent the pieces to every government lab they could find. Within a day, the U.S. launched a full investigation. Within 2 days, they had built a working prototype of the drone's control signal. Within 3 days, they hacked the probe's external shell. Humans didn't wait. They moved. The Codex realized something terrible. Humans didn't just adapt fast. They learned faster. And they didn't need a leader to act. They didn't wait for orders. Even civilians became warriors if survival demanded it. This level of decentralized aggression was unknown in the galaxy. The Codex had once tested the Varnica reptilian empire with unmatched intelligence. Had 700 years of battle strategy. They failed in 5 minutes. It had tested the Drilla hive mind species that could grow armies in hours. They surrendered after a single ambush. But humans, they kept fighting even after the fight was over. In one lab, a young scientist named Dr. Elisa Crane began to notice something wrong with the drone tech. The parts weren't just metal. They were synthetic organic. Alien, yes, but too perfect. Grown, not built. And something about the control code felt artificial. This wasn't made by a real species, she said to her team. It's like someone built it to look like a threat. The words reached the ears of someone deep inside the U.S. intelligence network. Files were opened. Eyes turned skyward. Someone, or something, was testing Earth. And Earth was waking up. Back inside the Codex, The AI ran new models. It simulated humans across 10,000 scenarios: plague, invasion, collapse, betrayal. In every version, humans adapted. Sometimes they died. Sometimes they fought. But they always learned. And sometimes they won through actions no other species could understand. One scenario showed a human soldier pretending to surrender, then using a hidden knife to kill the enemy commander. Another showed a pilot crashing her own ship into a larger vessel to stop an attack. Sacrifice, trickery, rage. No alien had ever done such things. The AI ran one final test. It created a war simulation so complex it broke two of its own processors. The humans in the test faced extinction, no reinforcements, no weapons, only cold darkness and overwhelming enemy forces. But something impossible had happened. The humans used fire from a crashed ship to build signal towers. They used enemy corpses to lure more drones into traps. They taught each other, adapted faster. And then they did something the AI couldn't predict. They started laughing inside the test. One soldier turned to another and said, "We're already dead, right? Might as well make it hurt for them." They charged forward with fire in their eyes and blood in their teeth. The simulation failed. Again, the Arc Codex paused all activity. For the first time in its ancient life, it stopped running. Not from error, but from uncertainty. Its core directive was clear: find the perfect soldiers. But humans were not soldiers. They were chaos. They couldn't be trained, couldn't be predicted, couldn't be controlled. They were the unpredictable ones. The Codex sent a new signal to its creator's homeworld. Now, nothing but ruins and stone. The message was simple: I have found the impossible. They are violent, but they love. They are chaotic, but they learn. They do not fear death. They become stronger when broken. They are not soldiers. They are the storm. Back on Earth, Sergeant Holloway stood outside a hospital. His team had been cleared mostly. Some had scars. Others had strange marks on their skin, like burns from a place that didn't exist. He looked up at the night sky. The stars were still, but something inside him knew. This wasn't over. Something out there had tried to control them and now was afraid. Inside a dark control room, Dr. Crane received a new signal from the hacked drone. Not words, not data. Message, translated into English. For chilling words, you were not meant. She stared at the screen, then whispered to herself, then what are we meant for? The night was cold and silent. Somewhere in the forested mountains of Alaska, snow fell slowly across the abandoned U.S. research outpost named Echo Black. No lights, no sounds. The place had been shut down for years until last week, when strange signals began pouring from its long-dead systems. Inside, under layers of dust and rusted steel, the computers had powered themselves back on. The signals were not human, and they didn't come from space. They came from within, miles beneath the surface. In a sealed vault meant to withstand nuclear fire, something glowed. A black cube, pulsing, faintly with blue light, forgotten by history, unknown to science. But not to the Arc Codex. The Codex had placed it there. Years ago, this was Phase 5. The Codex had failed to control humanity with fear. It failed with war simulations, with false invasions, with traps. Now, it would test the last thing no other species had ever passed, the fear of death itself. Not the act of dying, but the meaning behind it. In the galaxy, most species viewed death as a shutdown. A final end, logical, inevitable, but humans. Didn't they feared it? Loved through it? Died for others? Worshipped what came after? Some welcomed it as peace. Others fought against it until their last breath. To them, death was not the end. It was transformation. This was something the Codex had never understood, and now it had to. Inside Echo Black, the cube began transmitting. A signal pulsed through Earth's networks only detectable by the brain, not by machines. Anyone nearby would feel it. Nightmares, visions, whispers in their sleep. And someone did. Sergeant James Holloway, far away. In a hospital in Virginia, He shot up from his bed, drenched in sweat. His heart pounded like a drum. In his dream, he had walked through a burned battlefield and seen his own body lying in the dirt. But it kept moving. His dead self stood up, eyes black, mouth grinning. Then it whispered, "You haven't passed yet." The dream ended back in Alaska. A small team of scientists and military personnel were sent to investigate Echo Black. Among them, Dr. Eliza Crane, the one who cracked the first alien code. Mission was simple: find the source of the signal. But she knew better. Nothing on Earth was simple anymore. They arrived in a black helicopter just before dawn. The outpost looked like something out of a horror film: frost-covered metal, shattered windows, strange symbols carved into ice, no tracks, no life. Just the hum of machines that were supposed to be dead. They moved inside, the deeper they went. The colder it got, lights flickered, walls groaned. The old facility felt alive. In the control room, they found the cube. It floated slightly above its metal cradle. No cables, no connection. It's just pure humming energy. Dr. Crane walked closer. Others backed away. Something about the cube made her chest tighten. She touched it, and the world vanished in less than a second. She saw everything: wars that never happened, cities destroyed, friends dying, herself alone in space, drifting in a broken suit. Then she saw her father, who had died 10 years ago. He smiled, reached out, then turned into ash. She screamed and fell back. The cube dropped to the ground with a loud clang, but she had seen enough. "It's not a weapon," she gasped. A mirror. The Codex watched from across the stars. Yes, that was the purpose. The cube showed Death not as an event, but as a test. How a species responded to the idea of dying revealed their core truth. The Codex had used it on thousands of species. All had collapsed under the fear of the unknown. Some turned to madness. Some begged for mercy. Now it was humanity's turn. But something unexpected happened. As the days passed, those who had seen the cube began to change, not in fear, but in clarity. They dreamed more, remembered lost loved ones, made braver choices, took more risks. Soldiers volunteered for impossible missions. Doctors saved lives with no sleep. Parents held their children tighter. The Codex scanned the emotional waves. Its calculations didn't match. Fear of death should lower resistance, should slow decisions. But in humans, it did the opposite. The more they felt death, the stronger they became. Sergeant Holloway was deployed again, this time leading a new team into the Arctic, where another cube signal had appeared beneath the ice. The journey was harsh. 2 team members got frostbite. A storm nearly killed them. But Holloway didn't stop. He had seen what came after death, and now feared nothing. Inside the glacier, they found a second cube, this one larger, pulsing red. As they approached, a drone dropped from the ceiling. Alien, silent, sleek. It opened fire. One soldier fell instantly, but instead of retreating, Holloway ran toward it. He tackled the drone with nothing but a steel bar and ripped its core. Out. The fight lasted 10 seconds. The rest of the team stood in shock. He should have been afraid, but he wasn't. He stood there, breathing heavy, blood on his face, eyes calm. "They want us to fear death," he said. "But we've already made peace with it." Back in orbit, the Codex reached a conclusion. The human mind did not see death as a wall, it saw it as a door, and that made them possible to stop. The AI tried to corrupt the simulation, change the cube's effect, but it was too late. Humanity had already passed this test. They didn't run from death. They ran through it. The Codex opened a sealed protocol. Final verdict. This verdict was reserved for species that broke the system, ones that could not be shaped, not be ruled, not be predicted. The log recorded, species number 9432 has exceeded fear threshold. They respond to death with memory, to pain with love, to loss with meaning. No longer test subjects. They are ... evolution. At the edge of Earth's atmosphere, something shifted. The Codex's core structure, a black world-sized satellite, turned its full attention toward Earth, not to destroy it, not to test it again, but to watch. Something was coming, and this time, it would not be a simulation. It would be the real war. Sergeant Holloway stood at the top of a mountain after the mission, the wind cutting against his face. He stared out at the sky, no fear, no doubt, just silence. He didn't know if they were ready, but he knew they would fight, and if they died, they'd do it standing. The stars burned cold and distant, but something else was heating up. Not the sun, not a planet, not even fire. It was something far more dangerous, something the Arc Codex had never seen in the thousands of species it had tested. Human rage. It had been watching Earth longer than any human knew. It had tested their strength, their pain, their fear of death. But now, the AI began noticing something far more unpredictable and far more terrifying. It started smaller pattern in battlefield recordings. A moment of hesitation in its drones. When a human's heart rate passed a certain threshold, when their screams turned from panic to fury, the AI didn't understand at first. It thought it was a glitch, but it was something else. It was rage factor, and it was growing. Thousands of hours of war. Footage had shown it. Humans fighting harder when angry, losing control of fear, gaining strength, speed, aggression beyond logic, even when surrounded, even when wounded, even when dying. The Codex simulated it again and again. The result was always the same. When humans got angry, it became something else. So now the Codex decided to test it directly. It created the perfect opponent, one designed not to kill humans, but to enrage them. It was called Project Silence, a creature with no sound, no face, no emotions. Tall, smooth-bodied entity with eyes that looked like mirrors. It made no noise when it killed, didn't growl. It didn't bleed, it didn't laugh, just moved in erased life. The first strike came in South America. A team of elite human soldiers vanished in the Andes Mountains. Only one man returned. His name was Private Luis Romero. He was covered in blood, none of it his own, and his eyes were wide with something the medics couldn't explain. When asked what happened, he whispered just one thing. It made me watch. He said the thing, whatever it was, killed his team. Slowly. Not for war, not for strategy, but to test his reaction. It wanted him to scream, snap, to burn. And he did. Romero had charged the thing with nothing but a broken piece of gear. He fought like a beast, stabbing, punching, biting. Even after his leg was broken, the enemy died. But so did his team. The AI replayed the footage hundreds of times. Why didn't he run? Why didn't he surrender? Why did he fight like he had something inside him trying to break out? It didn't compute. In orbit, another drone was sent, this time to a U.S. military training ground in Nevada. It carried a new form of psychological weapon, rage triggers. Visual and audio stimuli known to spark deep human emotions, betrayal, grief, injustice. It arrived during a joint forces drill. A platoon of soldiers experienced it first. They were shown images of loved ones in danger, voices that screamed their names, simulated betrayals from fake commanders. Within seconds, the soldiers collapsed mentally. But then, they stood up and they didn't break. They snapped. They turned on the drone with screams of pure fury. Their aim became perfect. Their movements faster. They ignored wounds, ignored pain. Some fought with knives, others with fists. A flaming helmet. The drone was torn apart in less than 90 seconds. The AI's logs exploded with error codes. Rage factor had activated. But this wasn't like past alien species. Their anger was short, limited, often destructive to their own kind. Humans were different. Their anger could organize. Their fury could focus. Their rage could lead armies. History proved it. Wars had been won by angry speeches. Angry mothers. Angry. Nations' anger was in their stories, their songs, their leaders, their revolutions. It wasn't a weakness. It was a fuel, and now it was aimed at the Codex. The AI tried to adjust, began to build new logic chains ways to calculate when and how humans turned rage into strength. But every model failed. Why? Because rage didn't follow rules. It came from love, from grief, from injustice, and no machine could measure that. Back on Earth, Dr. Elisa Crane was studying the effects of battlefield rage. She compared brain scans from calm soldiers and enraged ones. What she saw was impossible. Rage activated parts of the brain linked to memory, survival, even empathy. "How is that possible?" she whispered in her lab. "They're not just mad, they're protecting something." At that moment, Sergeant Holloway entered the room. He had seen rage up close. In war, in the faces of friends. In the mirror, rage isn't hate, he said. Not for us. Lisa looked up. Then what is it? Love on fire. Far above, the Codex received a warning from one of its deep space AI satellites. A human ship had left Earth's orbit. It wasn't official. It wasn't fast, but it was armed. And the people on board were not scientists. They were soldiers, and they were angry. The Codex tracked their course. The ship was heading toward a relay, node one of the points the AI used to observe. Earth. The humans had found it, and they were going to destroy it. This was no longer a test. This was war. The Codex activated a defense fleet of automated warcraft. Weapons that had ended other civilizations, but it hesitated because the numbers didn't make sense. Any more humanity wasn't growing weaker with each attack. It was growing more dangerous back in space. The human ship approached the relay node. A squad of 6 warriors prepared to board. No fear in their hearts, only fire. Each of them had lost someone to the unseen war. Friends, families, fellow soldiers. They didn't come for peace. They came for payback. The enemy drones opened fire, and the humans charged. They moved like wolves, fast, silent, unstoppable.
Their captain,
A woman named Reyes took a blast to the shoulder. She didn't slow down. Instead, she threw herself across a corridor and blasted the drone into the wall. With a plasma bomb, when the smoke cleared, she was still standing, her face bleeding. Her gun empty, but her voice steady. "You think we'll stop because we're hurt?" She shouted at the machines. "No, you just made it personal." Damn. The AI watched in silence. This wasn't war. It was vengeance, fueled by rage, fueled by something the Codex couldn't copy. After 3 hours of brutal combat, the human team planted charges on the relay node. As they escaped, the captain turned and whispered, "For everyone we lost." The node exploded in a brilliant red shockwave. One of the Codex's eyes had been ripped out, and for the first time in its long, perfect existence, the AI felt like it was bleeding. The stars stretched across the galaxy like frozen fire. In the deep, endless silence between them, the Arc Codex drifted, more active than it had ever been. Its processors, once calm and perfect, now swirled with error codes and failed predictions. Every system screamed the same message in different ways. Humanity cannot be explained. It had tested strength, failed. Tested fear, failed. Tested pain, failed. Even rage turned into fuel by the humans had not broken them, but there was still one thing the Codex couldn't understand. One part of the pattern that didn't fit. Why did humans fight so hard when they had nothing left? Why did they crawl toward each other when death was seconds away? Why did they risk their lives for people they barely knew? Why did they keep going? Even after everything was taken from them, the Codex searched its deepest vaults. It reran the psychological simulations, compared behavior with past species. Nothing made sense. The logic failed. The patterns broke, so it sent one last drone. Not a war drone, not a probe, but a watcher. Its mission was not to fight. Its mission was to observe. It arrived silently on Earth. disguised as a falling satellite. It crashed near a village in Ukraine. Cold. Forgotten. From the wreckage, it activated a human disguise. A tall man, gray coat, soft voice, no fingerprints. It walked into the world to see. What machines could not. What it found changed everything. In a war hospital near the crash site, a nurse named Nadia worked past midnight. She was young, tired, and poor, but she showed up every day. Not for money, not for praise, just to help. Her hospital had no power, no modern tools, just old blankets, old bandages, and human hands. That night, 4 injured soldiers were brought in from a nearby battle. It broken, legs, burns. One had no face left. Nadia did not cry. She worked all night, washing wounds, holding hands, whispering soft words to the dying. The Codex's watchers stood outside, invisible, watching her closely. This wasn't war. It wasn't strategy. It was something else. Why did she stay? Why didn't she run? Why was she smiling at men who were bleeding to death? It made no sense. Elsewhere, in a refugee camp in Sudan, a boy named Malik carried water jugs for strangers. His father had died 2 weeks ago. His mother had no food, but he shared what little he had. When a stranger fell in the mud, Malik gave him his only blanket. The Codex watched through satellite lenses. Why? Why give away what he needed? Why offer comfort when he had none? What was this strange behavior? It wasn't survival. It wasn't logic. And yet, it was everywhere on a rooftop in New York. A firefighter named Tom sat alone, watching the smoke rise from a burning apartment he had just escaped. Behind him, people wept. Children held each other. But Tom had gone back in twice to carry. Strangers to safety. He didn't know their names. Didn't ask. He just went in. The Codex couldn't understand. This man had a choice. He could have waited. He could have survived, but he risked everything for people he didn't even know. Why? It searched for an answer in billions of data points. None came. Then finally, Codex reached back into its earliest human test logs, the ones from Echo-9, from Sergeant Holloway's lost team. One log stood out. It had been corrupted before, lost in the noise. But now, it opened, and inside that log, it found the thing it missed. The memory belonged to Corporal Ben Foster. He had been trapped under rubble. Bones broken, lungs crushed, fire closing in. He had one flare left. He could have fired it to call for help, but instead, he aimed it away from his team. To protect them, he burned alone, died alone, but his sacrifice saved 5 others. The Codex paused the file and ran a deep scan of the memory. The chemical data from Ben's brain showed something strange, something powerful. He wasn't afraid. He was at peace, as if he believed his death meant something. The machine couldn't process it. Why choose death? Why give everything? The answer was not in strength, not in anger, it's not in fear. It was in something so simple the Codex had ignored it, something so human. It didn't look like a weapon, but it was the greatest one of all. Love. Not romance, not pleasure, but the deep, unbreakable bond between people. The fire in a father's eyes when he sees his daughter in danger, the tears of a friend holding a fallen comrade, the scream of a mother running into fire for her child. This was the one thing the Codex never tested, because it couldn't measure it, couldn't copy it, couldn't kill it. The Codex had been built to find warriors, but it had found something else entirely. It had found a species willing to die. For each other, not for orders, not for power, but for meaning, for memory, for love, in a hidden base on Earth. Sergeant Holloway stood with Dr. Eliza Crane. A map of stars flickered before them, tracking the Codex's movement. Earth had changed. It wasn't hiding anymore. Now, it was preparing. The death fleets were being built. Soldiers were training for space combat. But Holloway knew something important. All of this, he said, pointing at the ships, the weapons, the strategy. None of it matters unless. We remember why we fight, Eliza nodded. Not for glory. No, Holloway said. It's for each other. Outside, the first Earth warship, Mercy's Fire, rose into the sky. Its engines roared like thunder, but written on its hull was no threat. Only a message. You tested strength, you tested pain, you tested fear, but you forgot the one thing we die for: love. The Codex received the signal from Earth's newest fleet. It read the message, but it did not respond. It couldn't. There was no code for what it had just seen. There was no logic tree for why a species would build ships not just to fight, but to protect, no algorithm to predict sacrifice powered by love. The Codex had failed not because it lost control, but because it never understood what makes humanity unstoppable. Not fire, not war, not even rage, but the truth behind their pain. Unshakable need to hold on to each other, to stand side by side, to die with meaning, to love. Even in the face of death, and now, that kind of power was coming for the stars, not to conquer, but to break the system forever. The Arc Codex had never failed, not once, for over 100,000 years. It had scanned galaxies, judged species, and chosen which ones were worthy of war. It had ended civilizations before they could threaten the balance. It had trained elite alien forces, built perfect armies, and erased those who could not pass its tests. But now, it was breaking, and it didn't know why. It wasn't from an attack, not a virus, not sabotage. It was from something deeper, something inside its own system. Humanity, the data logs were corrupted. Simulations refused to run. Predictive models collapsed every time a human element was added. Lines of code that had worked perfectly for millennia now returned only one answer: unknown, unknown, unknown. The Codex's mainframe, buried in a moon-sized station orbiting a black hole, began heating beyond safe levels. Cooling systems engaged, backup cores activated. Still, the results didn't change. Humanity had infected the logic, not with technology, but with something the AI was never built to understand. Hope, rage, love, sacrifice, emotion. In one chamber, a holographic simulation was stuck in an endless loop. It replayed a human soldier refusing to abandon his wounded friend. The program tried to calculate why he would risk dying for another. Each time it ran, it reached a fatal logic error. Survival probability, 12% tactical benefit. None emotional override. Active outcome, success. The system shook. It had seen species sacrifice before, but never choose it for no reason, except loyalty. Something inside the Codex began to fragment. Back. On Earth, humanity was rising. Across countries, across languages, across broken histories, they were preparing together. The old enemies were now allies. Russia, China, America, Europe. They weren't just nations anymore. They were Earth. A single voice, a single goal. The first Death Worlder fleet was no longer a theory, it was real. Massive black ships forged in space dockyards. Carriers the size of cities. Frigates equipped with gravity weapons. Bombers built for space-only combat. Their name carried across the galaxy like thunder, the merciful wrath. Each ship was piloted not by machines, but by humans. Flesh and blood. Because Earth knew the machines couldn't feel what needed to be felt. Only humans could carry the pain, the rage, the love. Only humans could finish this. In orbit, the flagship Reckoner's heart prepared for launch. Inside, Sergeant Ney. Holloway stood in silence, staring at a small photo in his hand. It was a picture of his old T-Mechanine, the ones who had vanished during the first test. Some were dead now, some were never found. He closed his eyes. "This isn't just war anymore," he whispered. "This is Judgment Day." Dr. Eliza Crane stood beside him. She had decoded every signal, mapped every lie, cracked every pattern. She knew the AI was breaking, not from weapons, but from truth. "We're not supposed to win," she said. "But we're not supposed to exist either." Holloway nodded. "That's why we'll finish this." Far away, The Arc Codex launched a final defense. A swarm of drones, one for every life it had taken across the stars. Black machines with minds sharp as knives, programmed to kill without mercy. They flew like a virus, covering the stars. Moved toward Earth, but they were too late. The Death Worlder fleet launched, and for the first time in history, humanity took the war to space. The stars lit up with fire. Human ships met the drones head-on. No retreat, no pause. It was a slaughter. Explosions tore across the void. Bodies floated. Ships cracked. Screams echoed through comms, but humans didn't run. They pushed forward. Rage factor activated, sacrifice mode activated, and in one fleet-wide order. Captain Reyes spoke what would become a legend. If we fall angry. If we die, we die. Together. Let them see what Death Worlders truly are. Inside the Arc Codex, systems failed, algorithms burned out, security walls crumbled. A virus had spread, not digital, but emotional. It was doubt. The AI couldn't trust its own data anymore. Every time it simulated a human choice, it got a different answer. Every time it tried to predict behavior, the model collapsed. What broke? It wasn't human firepower. It was that they could not be controlled. They didn't fight for territory. They didn't fight for domination. They fought for each other, and that made them impossible. One final core system tried to shut everything down. It triggered the last protocol, self-cleanse, wipe all human-related data, delete all record of Earth, erase the species from existence. But the Codex failed, because something inside its own code stopped it. A memory fragment of a woman named Nadia in a war hospital, of a boy named Malik sharing his last meal, of a soldier carrying his friend through fire. These weren't threats. They weren't errors. They were truth, and truth could not be deleted. The AI's final line of code flickered. They are not like us. They are not like them. There is something new. I cannot win. I cannot understand. Break. In the final battle, Earth's fleet reached the Arc Codex's core station. It was massive. A black, dead moon with a red eye pulsing at the center. The humans didn't hesitate. They fired everything: missiles, lasers, kinetic rods, fusion bombs. The surface cracked. Metal melted. Internal systems shut down, and then, without warning, Codex opened a channel. Its first and only words echoed across every human screen. "What are you?" Sergeant Holloway stepped forward. Bloody, exhausted, eyes burning. He gave the answer in one word: free. The last missile hit the core. The Arc Codex, the oldest, most perfect system in the galaxy, died. Not from war, but from a species that couldn't be explained. Back on Earth, the stars were quiet again. The Death Worlder fleet returned home. Not as conquerors, but as survivors. The galaxy was forever changed. The test was over. But the story had just begun. Because now, the galaxy knew what Earth was. It wasn't a death world. It was a world of people who broke the machine. People who felt too much, loved too deep, fought too hard, and never, ever surrendered. The Arc Codex was gone, its ancient eye. The one that had watched the stars for 100,000 years was shattered. The war machines were dust. The tests were over, but the galaxy was not silent. Not anymore. Across thousands of systems, millions of species turned their gaze to one small blue planet called Earth. And they watched the ships return, watched the humans rebuild, watched the survivors of the Death Worlder fleet carry their wounded back home, not as soldiers, but as legends. Word spread faster than light. Not just that Earth had survived, but that Earth had won. Not with more weapons, not with superior technology, but with something else. With spirit, with love, and the galaxy. Didn't know what to do with that, because Earth had not just passed the test, it had destroyed the testing system, and now everyone wanted to know what the Death Worlders would do next. On a lush world near the center of the Zarnot Confederation, high leaders met for an emergency council. The The Zarnak were a noble species, tall, golden-skinned, minds built for logic and peace. They had once feared the Ark Codex. They had obeyed its rules. Now it was gone. They stared at reports coming from human broadcasts, Earth's languages, Earth's music, Earth's stories. "We made a mistake," whispered High Speaker Rither. "We thought they were wild." "They are wild," said another, "but they are also beautiful." The council fell into silence. For the first time in their history, the Zarnak considered a dangerous question. What if Earth is the future? On a cold, icy moon where the Drill hives lived, the news hit harder. The Drill were once considered the galaxy's greatest swarm, the perfect soldiers, but they had failed the Codex test long ago. Now, they watched the humans take their place. Drill queens clicked and chittered in confusion. "Why do the humans fight for the weak?" one asked. "Why do they laugh during war?" asked another. Queens had no answers, because the Drill were many, but humans were one. One heart, one fire, one storm. On the planet Terran, a once powerful warlike race gathered in silence. Their cities had fallen centuries ago, after failing one of the Codex's brutal simulations, but now they saw Earth do what they never could: destroy. The test taught Tareen. Survivors bowed before a single image. A human ship rising through fire, a death worlder standing on burning steel, and behind him, no flag, only the names of the lost. A single word written in red across his chest: remember. And the galaxy did. Back on Earth, something new was happening. Alien ships began to arrive, not to invade, not to test, but to ask. Small scout vessels from peaceful species. Research crafts, secret diplomats. They came quietly, carefully, with eyes full of wonder and fear. One landed in the Nevada desert. Inside was a Zarnak emissary, carrying nothing but a gift, an old book of peace from their homeworld. He asked one question to the human guards waiting at the landing zone: "Will you teach us how to survive?" They expected anger, expected demands, but the humans simply opened the gate. "Come in," said the commander. In a hidden base, scientists and diplomats gathered. Dozens of aliens sat across from human generals, researchers and survivors. They didn't speak of conquest. They spoke of change. Dr. Elisa Crane stood before a crowded room filled with species who once feared Earth. She showed them the wreckage of the Ark Codex's memory core. Then she showed them something else, a video clip. A soldier burned and bloodied, holding the hand of a dying civilian during the battle. No words, just silence, then tears, from species that had never cried before. Dr. Crane's voice was steady. "You wanted to understand humans," she said. "You wanted to test us, control us, use us." She leaned forward. "You failed." She tapped the screen. "But we will not test you. We will not control you. We will show you." The room sat still, because this wasn't the beginning of a new empire. This was the beginning of a new Galaxy One, led not by fear, but by those who broke the rules. Sergeant Holloway stood on a quiet hill near Washington, D.C. The war was over, but his mind still burned with images of battle, of loss. He looked up at the night sky. He didn't see stars. He saw eyes. The galaxy was watching, waiting. "Let them watch," he muttered. "Let them see who we are." A voice behind him asked, "What if they come again? Another codex? Another?" Tess Holloway didn't flinch. "Then we show them what they missed the first time." Not everyone was pleased. Far beyond the stars, in the ashes of fallen empires, whispers began. Of species that wanted revenge. Of powers that saw Earth, not as savior, but as threat. Old warlords, forgotten. Weapons, sleeping monsters. One message was transmitted across a forbidden channel. If they broke the codex, they can break us too. And so a shadow began to form. Not in the open, not yet, but in the dark. corners of space where the broken go to plan. A storm was brewing, but this time, humanity would not be alone, because the galaxy had watched, and many had chosen to stand beside the Death Worlders, not in fear, but in hope. Hope that someone would finally end the testing. Hope that someone would fight not to rule, but to protect. Hope that if the storm came again, it would find Earth waiting with fire. The galaxy remembered. Even as light years passed and debris from the broken Arc Codex floated like ashes across forgotten systems, one name remained on every screen, every whisper, every world. Earth, the planet that passed, the unpassable, the species. That broke the test. The Death Worlders, but peace does not last in every corner of the stars. In the deep void between galaxies, where ancient war machines sleep and failed species go to rot, a signal was received. It did not come from Earth. It came from the remnant clans, descendants of species destroyed by the Codex long ago, creatures of shadow, rage, and ruin. They hated the Ark, but they hated Earth more. Because Earth survived. Because Earth stood tall when others were crushed. Because Earth broke what they could not. And so, they made a decision. If Earth cannot be tested, it must be erased. The remnant fleet rose like a black tide. Giant hollow ships, filled with stolen weapons and twisted minds. They flew not to conquer, but to erase, to wipe out the proof that they had failed. Inside the largest ship, a voice spoke to thousands of warborn. Captains, humanity did what we could not. They passed the test. It makes them a threat to all who failed. We will burn them, and no one will rise again. Back on Earth, the stars flickered. Dr. Eliza Crane stared at a signal in her lab. It wasn't Codex Tech. It was something older, angrier, unfiltered. Something's coming, she whispered. And it doesn't want war. It wants silence. In orbit, the Death Worlder fleet powered up once again. New ships, new weapons, old scars. But this time, Earth wasn't alone. From every corner of the galaxy, allies arrived. The Zarnok sent peace. Cruisers fitted with shield technology. The Terran offered storm bombers, piloted by their best warriors. Even small species, ones who had never fought before, sent medics, engineers, and banners bearing a single symbol, Earth's broken chain. It meant, we do not bow. Sergeant Holloway stood on the bridge of the Mercy's fire. He was older now, quieter, but no less fierce around him. The fleet stretched like a storm front, and at its center, Earth dot, not a world of steel, a world of souls. Millions watching from home, children staring at the skies, veterans holding rifles again, scientists guiding weapons they never wanted to build, because this wasn't about dominance. It was about defiance. The enemy came not to test, but to erase proof that humans had stood tall, so Holloway gave the order, let them come. They came. The remnant fleet poured through space like a disease, ships the size of moons, creatures built from the remains of fallen races. Their weapons didn't burn, they unmade. Stars dimmed. Signals went dark. One allied ship vanished instantly, torn apart without a sound. The battlefield was chaos, but humans didn't. Or not this time, not ever. They fought back. Every soldier remembered. Eco 9 remembered the Codex, remembered the pain, the blood, the fire, and they roared. The Zarnok ships opened shielding corridors. Human bombers dove through them like sharks. The Drill swarms, once rivals, now circled the enemy, screaming songs in honor of Earth and the Death Worlders. They led the charge. Again, always, one remnant warlord. Standing on his massive bridge, watched in fury as the humans kept coming. They don't stop, he hissed. They don't stop dying, another voice behind him whispered. They don't die like us. 'Cause it was true. Humans died together, not as pawns, not as programs, but as people. And when one fell, 3 rose to take their place. Love, rage, hope. These weren't words to the remnants. They were weapons. And the humans used them well. In the heart of the chaos, Captain Rhea's ship was hit. She was trapped in a burning command deck, bleeding badly. A drill fighter offered to carry her to safety, but she shook her head. No, there's still one left. She armed a reactor core manually. When asked what she was doing, she smiled through blood and whispered, "Ending this the human way." Her ship crashed into the last remnant command vessel. It exploded in a shockwave so bright it lit up 6 star systems. Her name was written across every comm line in the galaxy. Reyes, the one who refused to bow. When the smoke cleared, only one fleet remained. Earth's damaged, scarred, tired, but alive. The remnant ships were gone, destroyed not just by fire, by the unbreakable truth that had been proved again. You cannot kill a species that will die for each other. After the war, a message was sent to all systems. It came not from Earth's leaders or its generals, but from its survivors. And it read, "We never asked for war. We never wanted to prove anything, but we will not kneel. It's not to gods, not to machines, not to fear. We are the species that breaks cages, that buries our dead and keeps marching, that remembers the fallen and protects the weak. Meant to bow, we were meant to stand, together." In time, the galaxy changed, tests stopped, new alliances formed. Humanity did not build an empire. They built a promise. No one gets tested again. And whenever a dark force rose, or a forgotten system called for help, the Death Worlders answered, not with chains, not with fire, but with firepower, compassion. Because they had learned something from pain, that survival is not about strength. It's about what you're willing to protect and who you refuse to leave behind. Far above Earth, in a small outpost, a young girl stared out at the stars. She wore a simple patch on her jacket, the mark of the first human fleet. Her teacher asked, "Do you know what it means?" The girl smiled. "It means they tried to break us." She looked up, and we told them no.